morning.
Good morning, everyone. Well, we are moving into a new dimension of experience. What we have been hoping for a long time, a really long time, is the new age to arrive. And so we always kept thinking that it's going to happen sooner, soon. But actually right now, we are beginning to watch this happen. Everybody thought that the coronavirus was going to go on and on for maybe a couple, 3 years, because we'd never be able to catch up with it and quiet it down and then wipe it out. But it's beginning to look now like we are beginning to make strong inroads on putting down this coronavirus epidemic. So that's going to happen. I said before, and people said, well, you're exaggerating. By the end of this year, we will be done with the coronavirus, and that's good news. But so much more stuff is taking place on, Zoom and all of these virtual meetings that we've had to have because we can't meet on a physical level. So there's a question: why did the virtual date not go well? And it's because it had a bad connection.
That's always a tough act to follow.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Unity Boulder, here in person and online. I just got a few quick announcements, actually one announcement. For those of you who have children who are in our Sunday school, since we reopened back up, we've been using a separate entrance to bring our children in, which has been this back entrance back here. But we're going to switch it to the side entrance by our patio over here, so that if you do have small children to take to Sunday school, you no longer have to park in the back and then walk around or whatever. That just seems like kind of a pain. So we're going to make so you can park in the front, so you can take your kids over here and come in the front door. And that's all we have for today. So, oh, wait, hold on.
Good morning. I wanted to introduce our guest today.
Go for it.
Yeah, definitely. So we are treated today. Oh, what had happened there? There we go. Our guest today is Sheldon Sands, who is a longtime Boulder area pianist, concert producer, composer, and teacher. His passion for world music and his awareness of music's ability to build bridges between diverse peoples continues to fuel his work as an artist, educator, and performer. His Dead Sea Strolls CD, recorded in Israel with noted Jewish and Palestinian musicians, has gained widespread and numerous accolades. He's been the pianist and music director for Congregation Nevai Kodesh. Did I get that?
Nevai Kodesh.
Thank you, sir. And who in normal times hold their high holiday services here at Unity for almost 20 years now. Just as a special treat, we're...
Around 5 or 6.
Oh,
4 or
4
5 years. Yes.
Numbers. Anyway, as a special treat, he announced, or we were talking today, he's going to treat us with an instrumental piece called Crystal Silence by a jazz composer that recently passed, Chick Corea. Chick was very influential in the latter half of the 20th century in his jazz compositions. A beautiful performance. I was just thrilled to hear that you'd be playing a Chick Corea piece for today, so thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, please, Unity welcome for Sheldon Sands.
Thank you.
You don't need to meditate when you have music like that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank
Takes you to another place. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, everyone that's joining us on live stream as well. Jack and I are doing a minister's panel this morning.
Yes, and it's about the foundation of trust. And I'd like to begin with something that all of us are aware of. In our political system here in the USA, so many of our politicians lack integrity. And actually they will lie and deceive to get what it is they want in their own personal lives. The day of the statesman, that is, those individuals that got elected to office who actually put the people in their constituency first, there are very few. There are very few politicians in this Western culture of ours that actually do put the people first and the good of the people first. So I want to talk about that whole idea that has to do with trust. We should always understand that if you don't have politicians who are in the public eye, and people of stature also who are in the public eye, if they persist in lying and deceiving and conducting their lives in a way that is not truthful, what will happen eventually if they keep getting away with it is that it will run over into our society. If they're getting what they want out of these situations and they're not being called to responsibility because of what they're doing, what will happen is our children will get the idea that the only true element in life is winning, getting what you want out of life. And it doesn't matter if you lie or deceive or steal. It's just a matter of getting what you want. If you can get away with it, you should do it. So that is the greatest danger we have, and let me explain why. If we devolved to that place where people think it doesn't matter if you lie or deceive or cheat, because winning is everything. Getting what you personally want is all that counts in this Western world of ours. If that were to become the status quo, the accepted way of conducting one's experience, you would be attempting to have a society without trust. In other words, there would no longer be any trust among human beings, because if lying got you what you wanted and it didn't matter if you lied or not, then you wouldn't be able to trust the gas station attendant when you take your car in to have them look at the fact that you're leaking some oil and that you need to get something done. That gas station attendant could tell you anything, like you need a new transmission, you need a new whole engine, we have to replace your engine, or you have to replace your car. In order to make money, he could lie to you, because in a society where there is no truth, and nobody really operates from truth or trust, you go to a dentist and you say, I need a cavity filled, and the dentist is going to sell you a whole root canal, or is going to sell you, dentures or something else for money. You go to a doctor, and the doctor's going to say, well, it's not just a cold. What you've really got is, you've got this new form of this virus, and it's going to take time for me to treat you. Or you go to a psychiatrist. The same thing is, if there's no truth, if we give up on truth, we give up on trust. And you cannot have a society without trust. That is why those people in the public eye, our politicians, need to be held accountable. Not because we want to get them for what they're doing, because we want our society to be able to continue and have a modicum of trust in our relationships. So that's one of the most important things I wanted to share with you today about trust.
So we came up with the idea of doing a minister's panel this Sunday because Jack and I have been caught up in a lot of ministerial details this week. We have lost two of the greatest hearts of our church this week. We lost Dennis Drake on Tuesday night, and we lost Gail Wagner on Thursday night. And we have a picture of them, so you can see that's Gail on the left, and that's Dennis on the right. That's Gail with us at Thanksgiving, not this last one, but the year before, with our family. And Dennis has been in the choir for 32 years, and Gail's been in the choir for 35. So our community has really, well, we've lost in the physical two of the more important, special people that have really been a part of this place much longer than this actual building. And Gail was the head of our prayer group, our prayer partners group, so probably many of you have prayed with her. She was actually on Zoom with the prayer group this last Sunday before she passed away. That's how devoted she was, even though she was facing an illness that
She fought with for 14 years.
yeah.
Dynamic soul.
But here she was that dedicated to praying with others, even in the midst of what she was facing. So I know that I'm going to look for them when we're performing at Easter and Christmas, and I know that we'll see that sparkling light, that they'll appear because they loved this center, this community, with everything that they were. And we are joined with Gail's husband is here with us today, Steve, and we're going to surround him in light and give him strength through this difficult time. And Dennis, that's his daughter, Nicole, and her husband, his son-in-law, who he loved just like his own son. So we're holding them in the presence today. So we really didn't get to preparing a sermon because the duties that are called during these times is that's what this work is really about, is to be here for those big moments. And that's one of the big moments of life, is the transition and the letting go of the coat. And it's a beautiful process and very humbling to go through. So I'm going to take more of an approach towards trust as far as relationships and, marriages and friendship. So Feltman says that trust is choosing to make something important to you vulnerable to the actions of someone else. I'll repeat that. Trust is choosing to make something important to you vulnerable to the actions of someone else. Feltman says, distrust is what I have shared with you that is important to me, is not safe with you. Distrust is what I have shared with you that is important to me, is not safe with you. And, Jack started with the political rift that we're seeing based on not enough truth and honor being held on that level. But I also think that it comes down to trust and truth come from a deep-rooted, authentic childhood, where we are raised in the importance of why being truthful and being trustworthy is of the utmost importance as far as a spiritual virtue, that you don't take the easy route, you take the honest route. And that's what keeps our teenagers from stealing and doing things that would be the quick way to attaining something, but knowing to do the hard work to be authentic and honest, and that they will move forward in their careers, in their lives in an abundant way, because people feel honesty. People are attracted to truth. So I shared this passage a couple weeks ago in my sermon about this village that raised their children in a certain way, and I'm going to read it again today because I think it's very telling to what creates wholeness as far as a village, as far as growing up in a place where we see and we reflect beauty worthiness, and love. And that's where truth really stems from. So I'm going to read this from The Wild Edge of Sorrow. And Francis Weller says this: I remember vividly in my experience in Maldoma, Soma's village of Dano in Africa, I felt pangs of envy when every night near dusk people would gather in the common area and share their day. This is when we have happy hour in our culture, drinks at half price. Perhaps this is how we anesthetize ourselves. In Dano, there was food and millet beers, stories, laughter, and tears. It was thick with a feeling of welcome. Children were there as well, weaving in and out of conversations, playing until they lay down and drifted into sleep, filled with the sounds of their families and community, which lapped in their ears like waves on a beach. They were not segregated from the world of the adults. If a child was hungry and was nursing, any mother with milk offered her breast to the child. It took me days to figure out who exactly was the child of whom. Imagine how profoundly that would impact us if we knew that we were welcome in any home and could find sustenance at any fire. This is a lasting effect on the psyche. The children I met were generally happy, engaged, and curious, and they displayed a certain confidence. They knew they were a welcomed part of the village. It was clear to me that what we long for and what we need is the fulfillment of this primary satisfactions. This nightly ritual was in stark contrast to Western culture. We tend to spend our nights separated from one another. Our storyteller is the television or the internet, and children are hustled off to bed to follow some regimented idea of bedtime. After all, they have schedules to follow. We often go entire days with only the barest connections with one another, with the earth, with ourselves. We are busy people. What I felt in the people of Dana was a deep sense that they knew their worth and their welcome. These two things are extensions of one another, worth and welcome. There wasn't any anxiety of whether someone was good enough to be let inside the circle. This was a given. And don't hear this as some altruistic practice. The generation of healthy and contented people was a necessity for the sustainability of the village. Everyone was needed. Therefore, their well-being was essential. A healthy village requires healthy individuals. And to become a healthy individual, you need a healthy village. They are mirrors of one another, the one supporting the other. And I bring this up because I think that the idea of not trusting others, ourselves, and God come from that early childhood developmental side of something cut us at some point and made us feel less than. And when we feel less than, we don't feel connected with God. We don't feel that divine connection because we wonder why we aren't as good as the neighbor or we aren't enough. And so we project through our thoughts and our words the insecurities that we hold in ourselves. And the world constantly shows us that we aren't enough and that we're not worthy because what we harbor in ourselves puts out that energy and we attract back to ourselves by the law of attraction the message we feel about ourselves. It's not God showing us that we aren't enough, but we are constantly showing ourselves that we're not enough because what we're harboring is going out to the universe and we're being met with that. So if we want to have trusting relationships, it has to come down to trusting ourselves, trusting our relationship with this greater power, this greater love we call God. And then eventually we'll get to a place where we really don't care if people really like us or think we're worthy because we know we're likable and we know we're worthy and we will attract those people that will be in synergy with our truth. I found this article today about a woman that was bullied as a kid. She held this lower feeling inside of herself for decades. She said, I have struggled with low-grade depression, anxiety, and a lack of trust for people, and feelings of inadequacy and underachievement that have persisted despite years of therapy. She had an aha moment one time when she was at work when things were having a lull, and she goes, wait, there's Facebook. I could reach out to my bully. So first she reached out in Messenger to this person that had bullied her in school, and there was no response. But she got brave enough a week later to reach out again. And this time the woman responded and said, can I have your phone number? And she called her. Her bully called her back. And she said, I am so sorry. She said repeatedly during her call, I swear I'm not a bad person. I think about what I did to you all the time. I don't know why I chose you. I had a miserable home life. She revealed some of the trauma she'd been through, and though I might have guessed that my classmate came from a troubled background, hearing it from her own lips made all the difference. I was finally able to forgive her, and I helped her forgive herself. When we think about the idea of trust, many think about how much they want to trust the people around them on earth. But as the Bible reminds us, the most important form of trust we can have is our trust in God. To have a relationship with God, you need to be able to trust that Spirit will provide for you and guide you on your journey for healing. And in that journey of healing will become that self-worthiness and love and trust for self. And then we will attract relationships where we can trust others. If we're still attracting relationships where people are deceiving us, then we still don't trust ourselves. We don't know our worth. And it's a matter of growing our intuition. You know when somebody's being dishonest with you. No matter what they say to you, you know. I had a situation with my dog in the last few weeks where she's fallen ill. And I had a pretty good idea of roughly what must be going on with her, and she's elderly. I took her to the vet last Saturday. I did every natural thing, and then finally I was like, I need to get to the bottom of it. And the vet saw her for 10 minutes. You hand the dog off, and they take it into a building without you there, which any of you that have pets, it's your child. It's like having an animal be taken away from you, where you can't intuitively talk to this vet about what you've been seeing. This person rushed through it. She calls me on the phone. Oh, she's just going to be fine. It's just this, this, and this. And she brings my dog out and charges me $160. And I wanted to believe her so badly. Right? Of course I wanted to hear that everything was okay, but I didn't go there because I knew something was wrong. But I believed her, I followed her regimen, and nothing changed. She wanted to do a follow-up appointment with the medicine she gave me, where she thought there'd be a full healing. And at the follow-up, I sent my dog in, and this time she's in there for an hour and I haven't heard from her. And I get a phone call from her, and she goes, you need to get this dog to a specialist immediately. And it was the very topic that I thought it would be, which I'm not going to say. And then I went to that vet, and it was. And my intuition knew to the core exactly what was wrong with my dog. But we question that intuition, and we want to look to someone else to tell us what the truth is. When the truth is in the very midst of us, when we believe it, and we believe our own truth, and we follow it, we would avoid a lot of mishaps if we trusted what is innately ours, which is a direct connection with this greater power, this greater love we call God, that's guiding and directing every aspect of life.
Well, you talk about a village where people are interconnected with one another to such a degree that they look upon everyone in their experience as family. And you know, it's harder and harder to do that in an expanded village like we have here in the United States of America. But I remember reading something that was written back in, you know, 1927 by Charles Lindbergh. As a young man, well, he became a Navy pilot, and he was an author, a Navy pilot, and an inventor. But as a young man, he fell in love with science. He thought that science is ultimately going to be the answer that's going to save humanity. And at that time, you know, they of course were developing airplanes, and he became a pilot. He won a great award when he flew, was the first one to fly from New York to Paris nonstop. So he was enamored by science to a degree that he said in this article that I put science above God and man. I knew science was going to be the thing that's going to work to make humanity happy and fulfilled. But then the war came, and I watched all the scientific inventions that I thought were going to be the savior of humanity. I watched them being used to destroy human beings, destroy humanity in a massive fashion. And it's then that I began to realize that without spiritual truth, in other words, we had all these researchers I believed in, all these scientists, all the people that created the technology who I believed in the science, but now I see that they created these machineries and now they're deciding to use them to the detriment of mankind. And I realized that without spiritual principles of truth, we cannot survive. We will not survive, and we will not find harmony or happiness in the human family unless we actually open ourselves up completely and make the priority of our lives spiritual truth. You see, the technology wasn't going to do it. And look today at our technology. How it is separating us from each other. More and more people are involved in what's going on their screens, in their cell phones and their computers, than they are with their family or interacting with people. In fact, sometimes you'll be around people, and maybe this has happened to you, it's happened to me a number of times. I'm talking to a number of people, and the young people there are with their cell phones. They're supposedly involved in the conversation, but they're not. They're texting somebody and getting texts back. So they're completely distracted and disconnected without any feeling toward what's being taking place, what's being spoken about. And so our problem is it comes down to opening ourselves up to the idea, and if you don't get anything else out of this talk, you've heard me say this before, don't ever try to get away from this truth. We are not self-created. We have a creator. We are created by a divine intelligence that is beyond our finite comprehension, but not beyond our relationship, and not beyond our understanding, and not beyond finding the joy, happiness, healing, and peace that every human being wants. We will never get that unless we get God as a priority in our experience. When children are growing up in our society, it's natural to develop an ego. There's nothing wrong with the ego. The ego is a servant of life. But it must be set in the connection with the divine intelligence that has given us life. So what has happened is we have now so believed in the ego and its abilities that, you know, our intellect, our ego-centered intellect, can really bail us out, can really save humanity from itself. So we're going to create all this technology, and it's going to bring us into this place of happiness where we don't have to work anymore and do all of this. And so the technology is what we are worshiping. We are worshiping the ego-centered idea of self. as though we were self-created and the only intelligence comes from our ego-centered consciousness. Let me say this. Unless we return to an understanding that this intelligence that gives us life will also give us insight, will also guide us and guide our ego-centered awareness to live lives that are, successful, beautiful, harmonious, and free of pain, fear, and suffering. But it will come with, listen to it, it's never going to go away. These words will bother you until you embrace them. It comes with an understanding that ultimately each and every one of us must begin to trust God and the love and benevolence that we know God to be. And I'm going to finish this up by saying, if we continue in our spiritual practice, well, let me couch it this way. In the ministry, back when I was going to the ministerial school, and they would talk about some of the difficult things that ministers will have to deal with. And among them is that you're being called to go to a hospital or go to someone's home where someone is passing, and there are relatives there. And sometimes it'll be a child, which has happened a number of times to me over the years that I've been in the ministry. And you see, as a minister, you're supposed to have a handle on how to deal with all these situations. And people, when they're at their, the most vulnerable place where they're losing a loved one in their family, they'll be looking to the minister. But don't ever assume, they tell us, these ministers in school, don't ever assume that you have any understanding about how to make them feel okay about what's taking place. The only thing you do when you're going to a hospital or someone's home where someone's passing is the only thing you can do. You can show up. That's it. You haven't got all the knowledge or the wisdom to try to help these relatives through this difficult time in their experience. You don't. But if you show up, you are there. And whatever conversation needs to take place, you'll be there. But you'll be there as a servant of God. You don't know what to say. Maybe you'll say some things that'll be of help. But otherwise, don't ever suppose you understand what's going to make them feel better. Now, let me tell you something about showing up. If you continue in your spiritual practice, you continue in your meditation, you continue in the faith of looking past the inconsistencies and the difficulties of other human beings, that's your faith. You do that. You don't wait to do that in heaven. You do it now. You're looking beyond those things, those affronts, those things that have happened that people do, and you look beyond them. You don't get into blaming. You don't get into punishing. You don't get into trying a vendetta. You simply look past it, and you bless from within, because you know that that soul also is struggling to understand its relationship to this intelligence, which is God. Now, if your children grew up and they develop an ego, which is natural, and they also were developing the idea that God is omnipresent, everywhere present, in every person, in every place, in every condition, in the rivers, in the oceans, in the mountains, in the forests, in the deserts. It's all God. They would grow up with an understanding that everything they're living with is sacred. When you can do that in your mind, and it's a beginning approach. But at some point, if you practice the presence of God as being available in every situation, if you practice that, you will ultimately know it. So that you would never lie to anybody else. You would never cheat, manipulate, steal, or do anything like that, because you know it is yourself. That everything you look upon is divine. It is sacred. It is worthy of your blessing. Not your condemnation, not your judgment, not your gossip. It's worthy of your blessing. When you finally get to that place where you're living like that, in that priority, you will know something that you only thought might be true. You will know that God is almighty and benevolent, and everything taking place is for the expansion of your soul to enter into a one-on-one relationship, now listen to it, where you show up every day. Just as you were told to show up at the hospital, show up at the difficulties, you will show up every day unafraid to live in the moment and the conditions that you find yourself, because you will know yourself to be one with God. And that's where Eckhart Tolle is attempting to take everybody. Will you ever become open enough and one with God enough to actually live in the moment, where you're not trying to escape your call to serve somebody that's in need of service, bless somebody that needs a blessing, smile at somebody that's done something good, thank somebody? Or are you going to still pass by that person who's waving you down because their car has a flat tire? You're still going to pass them by? Because your personal ego-centered life is too important. You're not aligned yet with this divine intelligence that has given you breath and life. So I've gone on long now.
I've got a good example of this too. Actually,
Okay,
I'm
but
gonna share.
all right,
It's my turn.
I want to explain something to you. If you scratch a minister, you get a sermon.
So about 12 years ago, I was going to ministerial school, and I was doing it in the field, so it was a lot more years. It was more like 7 years of doing Unity Village in here, because I was ministering as well. But Jack was doing the bulk of the sermons. I maybe did a sermon once every 2 months at this phase, and I was learning. I was in training, and that's why they call it the field ministry training. And I was in New York with my daughter, who's 13 now, and I think she's about 8 months old, with my mom. We have an affinity with New York, with the theater, and we fill up our glass by going to watch Broadway shows and stuff. We just love music and theater and all that wonderful stuff. And I had spent a few days there with my mom, and I was flying back to Boulder, and my dad at the same time was going to be in a plane going back to New York to be with my mom in New York. And I was in a hurry to get here because I had to do the meditation that night here at Unity. And something happened with this bus that I was taking to the airport, but we got stuck in traffic, and I'm looking at the time, and there's no way I'm going to make it to this plane, but I've got to get here. There's no assistant minister. I am the minister that has to come and do the meditation, and the pressure that I had to get here, I thought was the meditation, but I'm standing in line with the baby in a suitcase, and if you've ever had strollers and a baby in a suitcase and traveling, it's quite cumbersome, you know, and I'm standing in this line, and I'm thinking, this security line is going forever, and I'm never going to make it to this plane. I mean, it's leaving in 5 minutes. I'm so far from a gate at this point, and at one point, somebody says, is anybody going to Denver in this group, to like 100 people? And I went like this. And these two women came all the way to me and grabbed my stroller and the suitcase and started running through the airport with me to get to this plane. It was the most bizarre thing, as if like I'm need to show up to this meditation service. It's clearly very important. And I made it to the plane, and I got here and I did the meditation, and had some really kind of out-of-body experiences during that meditation when I was leading it. And after the service, I had somebody go, you have to go to the phone right now in the office. And it's nighttime on a Wednesday. And it's a chaplain from the Boulder Community Hospital telling me that two major parishioners of our church had just lost their son to a drowning. And I had to get there before they got there to be there for the moment they were going to be told they'd lost their son, who grew up through our entire Sunday school. So it wasn't about the meditation. Clearly somebody had to be there to show up. And I'm thinking, I am so underqualified for this moment. I am not trained or ready. Like he said, you don't ever know what you're going to show up for, but I'm going to show up. And I had to send my nursing child to be driven home to Longmont. I go rushing to the hospital, and the whole parking lot is filled with hundreds of kids. This is like the most beloved child, and I'm getting through the crowd of kids, and I get taken to this little room where the parents had just been told. I made it right after that. And when I walked in, I didn't even put my bag down. The father of this boy just fell into my arms and fell to the ground and said, "Sing those songs that you and your mom sing to me." And I just started singing. I mean, he asked me what he needed, and I just started singing to him. And I looked over to the side of this room, and there was a chaplain sitting in his chair, and he's going, because I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm so underqualified. And he's just going,
You're the only one that could have done that.
everything I could have. All I needed to do was show up, and I had this beautiful elder just verifying. You just had to show up, and all I had to do was sing and be there with them. And it was such a powerful experience that I think about when all those things that fell in line, that changed my life. I knew I was capable now. Like he said, nobody's going to train you how to be at the bedside for these very tragic moments in people's lives. But we're all capable of it because we are the extension of God in everything. And if we just get out of our own way and get this chatting mind is quiet, we will be divinely put in the place where we're being called in every single aspect of our lives if we'll only trust it.
Right? It's trusting the unseen presence of this intelligence we recognize to be God. How has it existed? How has it lasted since the beginning of time? The idea that there is a creator, there is a God. How has it lasted this long? And so many people, especially when life on the physical level is going pretty well, we tend to just disregard the idea that we need to be in spiritual practice. We need to keep our minds alert to the fact that we did not create ourselves, that we are on a journey. We are going through a school of reflection. That's what we're doing here, by the way. We incarnated into this third dimension experience to reflect upon what we think and what we do. And if we're awake in living, we'll begin to see the relationship our thoughts and actions have upon the experiences that are coming to us. And at some point, we'll recognize that we're learning how to be more and more in alignment with God. We're learning how to be compassionate, caring, forgiving, loving beings. And that's what this journey is all about, because that's how you expand your soul. And what they were saying, the masters of life, I think the Zen masters said it the best: you will regret every moment you resisted death. Because when you move beyond the body, which is simply a cloak and in some ways a prison that has limited you to the idea that you are only a physical body and you haven't been open enough to feel the exuberation, the joy, the peace, the love that comes from shedding the illusionary idea of self and the definition of self being a body. You can shed that before you drop the body. But when you drop the body, you enter into soul consciousness. Your subconscious mind becomes your awareness. And you are able to reflect then upon the things you did through life. Some lessons perhaps you didn't learn yet that you want to learn. Some things that you could have done better. And so when people say, my whole life passed before me, we have that opportunity when we pass on. But you're doing it in the company of divine love, in the company of light and peace and truth and being. So this is an amazing, miraculous experience. We should not take it for granted any moment of our lives. We should learn to be awake in the process of living, and thereby finally being able to serve the moment. You see, we're out of our head. We're not futuring, not trying to figure out how to make the future better personally. We simply show up. And there you'll see before you, being guided by the light of the living God, what's next? What's next? And you'll not take any credit for it, because you'll realize what the masters all realize. It is not I. It is the Father of life that does this through me.
And there's a little interesting little point to my story too with this, is that on Thursday, it's the anniversary of my son's death and birth, Luca. So all this that we went through, this is the anniversary of that.
Right.
And Gail left on that same day. And I don't know if I've told Steve that, but she passed away on my son's birth and death day. And that same day is also Noah's birthday, who was the one that I was with in that experiment at the hospital. So you look at that. I mean, the fact that that boy that I ended up supporting, the parents, when they found out their son drowned, had the same birthday as my son that I lost. And now Gail, who is like an aunt to me and a grandmother to my kids, she left on the same day. You just can't make this stuff up, right? You just can't. It's holy, and it's beautiful, and it's...
Right. It gives testimony to the fact that the greatest psychic that ever lived, Edgar Cayce, said, we travel in soul groups. We're here for one another, but we have specific groups of souls that incarnate together and go through life together for some reasons that are beyond us. There's so many things that are beyond our ability to understand, like the death of a child in a particular person's experience. You just have to know that there's a greater journey. The soul of each person is on a greater journey than the one we are aware of right here in the body. And so there is intelligence that is behind all of that, guiding a greater scheme and a greater plan for all people. It is benevolent and beautiful.
And the 18th, which is the day in numerology, is a 9, which is one of the most spiritual numbers that there is in numerology. Just to keep showing you, this universe is so super honorable. And when you live from that knowing and that trust, your life becomes a miracle every minute of every day.
Right. There were some very dedicated Catholic monks, very devoted, who actually realized that they weren't able to raise, they had a parish somewhere in a foreign country, and it was very poor, and all the people were very poor. So they got together and started to figure out how to play the stock market. And they're the only ones that people know that are beating the stock market.
Really? Oh my God.
Every day.
If only.
Right.
All right.
Only. Yes.
Well, thank you all for coming. We'll take an offering for unity now.
Okay. Yes, we'll do that in our COVID fashion, under our COVID restrictions. Do we get the number of ways you can tithe up here to this ministry that goes 24/7, which you heard some about today? We don't always talk about what we're going through today, but it's been one of those weeks. In fact, I also had to visit a friend of 40 years, a really close friend of 40 years, who was a Buddhist, and he's going through his last days. He'll be leaving. He's with hospice now, too. So it sometimes gets pretty, taxing on the spiritual point, but we just show up. If you show up, something will happen and we'll guide you through. All right, we're going to take an offering, bring to mind whatever financial gift you'd like to make to Unity of Boulder. And let's bless that gift with this offering statement, this affirmative statement. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive, because I give.
And now we have a chance to listen to Nicole Williams with our incredible, well, part of our band. We have a few people out
Here.
today. Oh, here, can you push it with that? There you go. Louie and Larry and Todd. No, Larry, Todd, Nicole, and Louie.
I think my name is Larry. to let the rivers wash over me. I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready to let the rivers wash over me.
All right, well, we want to let you know that we have prayer partners available to you, and Steve and Sandy, if you could stand up, they can see who you are. They're wearing the white sashes. If you would like to pray with someone, they will be amazing with you today. And
Yeah,
just
just
stay
remain
seated in your
seated.
seat, and then they'll take you to the meditation room and pray with you. So let's all rise and close with a closing song. Thank you for that awesome song. I love it. You can sing that every week.
I'm so glad you
I love your voice with that song, too. You sound like Tracy Chapman, kind of. Is that a great song? It's just, good stuff. All right, here we go. Release and let go. And let the Spirit run my life. And my heart is open wide. Yes, I'm only here for God. No more struggle, no more strife. With my faith I see the light. I am free in the Spirit. Yes, I'm only here for God. I release and I let go. I let the Spirit run my life. And my heart is open wide. Yes, I'm only here for God. No more struggle, no more strife. With my faith I see the light. I am free in the Spirit. Yes, I'm only here for God. I release and I let go. I let the Spirit run my life. And my heart is open wide. Yes, I'm only here for God. No more struggle, no more strife. With my faith I see the light. I am free in the Spirit. Yes, I'm only here for God. Yes, I'm only here for God. Yes, I'm only here for God.
Yes. Good one.
Have a beautiful week. We'll see you next week. We also have the midweek meditation at 7.
Look, I got to thank you guys. Todd filling in, just Todd and Louie. We didn't have Larry today on a piano.
Or
we didn't have
bass,
Joel or
yeah.
bass. You guys were great.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Louie.
Have a wonderful week.